Hi there, it's Gabrielle Nicolay from the Complicated Kids podcast. And today I am really excited to bring you three speech language pathologists, AKA speech therapists, who have written books for children. And I'm super excited about this interview. I know that they are also excited to tell you why they wrote the books that they wrote. And so without further ado, Holly, we're going to start with you. Introduce yourself and tell us what you did.
Okay, so I'm Holly Rosensweig. I am a pediatric speech language pathologist, as Gabrielle said. And I have been working for two private practices in the DC DMV area for the last 15 years, which is hard to believe, but yeah, long time. And so I just wrote this book, and it actually officially launches June 27th is the launch day. So right now it's available for pre-order, but it is called Let's Go Puppy, and it's a board book for babies and toddlers that is designed to encourage early words and work on early communication skills with kids. So yes, and I don't know if you want me to go
we'll get into details, yes, in a second, because there's so much. Part of the reason I'm so excited to have this conversation with all of you, and we're going to get to the Stephanie's in a second, is because there's so much rich opportunity for book reading with babies and toddlers, and we don't often think of it that way. And so the four of us could geek out all night about that. We're going to hopefully keep it a little bit, keep it practical. But Stephanie Anderson, will you introduce yourself and what you did?
Yes. So hi, I'm Stephanie Anderson, and thank you so much for having me today. I am also a pediatric speech language pathologist. I am out of the Twin Cities area, and I've been practicing for about 8 years. And recently, about 3 years ago, right about in the start of the pandemic, started my own private practice, Twin Cities Speech Therapy. And then in the midst of being home with my daughter as a newborn, I wrote the Imitation book and self-published this book. Like Holly said, it's really focused on working with young children on their journey to learning how to talk through imitation of play actions and play sounds.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we're going to come back to why imitation is so important in a second as well. But Stephanie Cohen, please do the honors.
Yes, I am the fourth speech language pathologist in the room. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be part of this conversation. And I love Holly reached out to me and was like, I just want to get all the speech pathologists together who have written books. And I said, sounds like a great idea. I have also been in private practice for a number of years and had a background working in a couple other places. But my love is early intervention. So birth to 3 babies and toddlers, some places birth to 5, and helping parents have tools that make it easy for them to support their children's speech development. So I wrote my first Learn to Talk book, which came out just over a year ago. It was like a year and a week. And basically the idea behind it is just a book that gives parents something that can be used at lots of different stages of communication development and really can be used to support connection between children and their parents through social emotional learning and language development. And then the second book in the series came out in December of 2022. And then I've got a couple more on the way 4 more on the way next year and the year after. So
4 more.
It's been fun and a little bit strange, but exciting. So
cool. Stephanie Anderson, I saw you nodding when Stephanie Cohen said connection.
Yes.
Why are you nodding your head? Which we all were, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, that's just so big. And I think that's probably why all of us created a book. When I was working in early intervention and in my own private practice, so many parents are intimidated maybe by the idea of getting down and playing with their child. But something I hear so often is that they read. That's just usually a really big part of routines with young kids is reading. And so I thought if I could put some of those concepts into a book that's maybe a little bit more concrete and easier for parents to grasp, it could be a really nice starting point and give parents just more confidence and competence in using some of those skills outside of book reading. So starting with books, expanding out to everyday life, and just making that really applicable to their kids and their family.
And I think all of us have included, which you don't always see in children's books or in board books. I think we all have some kind of tips page, or guidelines for parents. So I think that's also really great and important to mention, because you don't always see that. And we know how to take traditional board books and modify them to use with kids, but I don't know that that comes as naturally all the time for parents and caregivers. You know, they might pick up a book and read it as written and might be missing out on some of those great opportunities for the connection, the joint attention, and all of these other great skills that you can use them for. So.
I am so happy that you mentioned that, because I noticed I only have the physical copy of Holly's book. I apologize. But I noticed on the first page, there are suggestions for parents about what to add. And I see Stephanie Cohen and Stephanie Anderson nodding your heads too. Your books have this as well. So Stephanie Cohen, can you say a little bit more about like why that's important? Why don't we just like sit and read the book the way it's written?
So I think probably Holly and Stephanie would agree that one of the questions or concerns that we get most often is I try to read to my child. I'm told I'm supposed to read to them. They will not sit and listen to a book. And so what I love about all of our books is that it has these little building blocks of language. It has, you know, pages that really can stand alone and be just like the focus of a quick book activity. But, you know, at least in my first Learn to Talk book, in the back, I wanted parents to be able to have different ideas. So I talk about being silly, using lots of big and crazy facial expressions, exaggerating your affect. I talk about being patient and pausing, because I think that's an engagement strategy that as speech language pathologists, we know, but parents feel like they've got to get through the whole, you know, line of text on a specific page, and repetition. And so I think that having these tips in the book, and like the tips that you've got in the front of your book, Holly, helping parents know that you can just gesture, you can just look at the pictures. You know, I talk a lot about that too, because I just want parents to feel successful. And that if they just look at, you know, one page and make a silly gesture with their little one, that's enough for that day or that, you know, that interaction. So I think we all probably just want parents to have options to be successful.
Do you think it's fair to say sometimes parents misunderstand? It's just occurring to me now. They kind of misunderstand what the goal of book reading is.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
And there may be some frustration that, you know, especially with little ones, that I've heard over and over again, that they don't want to sit, and they're like, I'm trying to read to them and they're running around the room, and I keep reading it at them, and, you know, I'm chasing them around trying to get them to focus. And I think as SLPs, we know, you know, how to make it so interactive and add, even with, you know, a book like Brown Bear, you know, Brown Bear, I always see recommended. If you're just reading the words, you know, it's not really making it interactive, whereas we're doing all these little games and, you know, trying to find ways to make it really entertaining and engaging. And so, you know, that's one thing that I think all of our books, you know, I was so excited to see both Stephanie's books, because we're all kind of working on those same skills and providing opportunities, but in different ways. And I think all of them have so many great opportunities for gestures, and even some of the same gestures, but, you know, within these different types of books. So I do think that's something, it's, you know, that kind of that skill of being able to take any book and make it interactive. And then, you know, there could be a lot more opportunity for books out there to provide that, and, you know, to have those tips of these are the gestures that you can use, and to really try to connect with the child and get that joint attention. So.
One of the things that I imagine all of your books have is a very well curated vocabulary list. Stephanie Anderson, do you want to say something about vocabulary that appears in your book specifically, or in early childhood books like this?
Sure. And mine might not be the best example, actually, but I'll give you a little preview. So on in my book, the imitation book, there is always just a little phrase that a parent would read, and it's very short. And it's also a directive with play sound in bold underneath. So the action, you know, someone's at the door, knock, knock, knock. So, and I think to your point of vocabulary, I think it's common things that a kid would be exposed to, a child would be exposed to, like knocking on a door, clapping your hands. So vocabulary in that sense, but it's also very much my book is highlighting a lot of these play sounds with an action. So things that are very accessible, easy. Here comes a car, beep, beep, eat the cookie, yum. So these are things, that kids are exposed to. So a lot of early vocabulary, early words, things that we would be hearing for our toddlers.
And that's amazing, actually, right? Because so often we're labeling and we're forgetting about verbs and actions. And
the early word books are, they're filled with nouns. I mean, most of them are. These are the first word books, helicopter and dump truck, and they're really not, focused on those fantastic functional early words and actions and yeah.
Or even the sounds, like the sounds that you have, Stephanie, in your book. I think we have some overlapping sounds.
Yeah.
But, those exclamatory sounds and words that maybe a child's not ready to say a full word yet, but we can make a fun sound. And as a speech pathologist, if you're reading one of the early words books with the photographs, our instincts are to point to a cookie and go, yum, yum, yum. But a parent may not know that.
The beep, beep. That's one all three of us, we all have, mine has a card. It says beep, beep. And then both of you have the beep, beep. So I've actually had some, speech therapy sessions where I've had all three of our books and we've gone through and we've done beep, beep, but in three different ways with three different, three different books. But yeah, that's so true. I mean, and I thought that was really interesting too, with Stephanie Anderson. Your book is, really focused on the imitation of the gestures and the actions. But then as I'm going through, there are so many great opportunities to work on the early sounds and words that start with the earliest developing sounds, like the beep, beep with the B, or like the vowels and doing ah. And there's just so many, even though it's geared towards imitation, there's so many ways that you can also work on the speech sounds and words. And then same with your Stephanie Cohen, it's like the other way where you're focused on a lot on the early sounds, but then there are also so many ways that you can use it to work on the gestures and the actions. So it's really neat to see.
It's so, and again, I think the four of us could geek out all night about this, but it is so multi-layer. So I actually today used Let's Go Puppy, which has an emphasis on early words, early sounds, right? Those are often the same thing. But guess what? I worked in some inferencing because the kid I was dealing with is a 5-year-old who was ready to sort of think about, okay, so puppy's coming inside with muddy paws. What do you think is going to happen? And so I think part of the reason I say that is just to point out, right? I think sometimes as parents, we get stuck on like, I need to read an age-appropriate book for my child. And they often just want the same books over and over. And that is lovely, to your point, Stephanie Cohen, about repetition, and Stephanie Anderson about imitation, right? So, but it's all of this layering in, and we can make, I mean, here's the thing about SLPs, right? We can do therapy out of our purse,
yes,
out of the lint in our pocket. If
we have, yeah.
But there's so much richness. And the thing I so appreciate about all of your books as we're talking about them is that they are providing the foundation for parents to learn these skills and then be able to add on to them. Do you guys want to talk about like visuals a little bit in your book? Stephanie Cohen, why don't you go first?
I would love to. I think that's one of the places I sort of started when I thought about this book, because we know that babies and toddlers are drawn to faces, right? They're biologically programmed to look at faces. And so what I wanted to do is take that and really like put it on the pages. And the other thing that I thought about when we were designing the pages is I really wanted simplicity, which I think is something all of our books have in common, because I think that when we look at so many of the books on the market, there's just pictures everywhere, or there's elements everywhere. There's little words all over the page. And we know that little brains like simplicity and that they're drawn to faces. So I used simple photographs of baby and toddler faces, and then the word or the sound on each page matches the mouth position of the faces on each page. This one sometimes makes people cry, which makes me so sad.
One of the little guys I work with loves that page, and we'll do the wow,
the crying page,
crying with a very realistic expression. So I actually really love that that's in there.
I'm going to point out, if you're listening to this on a podcast player, head on over to YouTube and you can see the video, because the pictures are, Well, honestly, the artwork in all three of your books is beautiful. It is
Thank
really,
you.
and they're all very different, but they're just charming. And I totally agree with you about the busyness. Like I
Yeah.
am overstimulated by half of the books
Me
on the
too.
shelf.
Me too.
And
The
it's frustrating to you know, to go to the bookstore and see, you know, they have the whole section of like the baby board books, and there's a section in Barnes and Noble that's labeled like early skills, early concepts, and they have all these like learn to talk books that are just loaded with these nouns that are not functional, you know, no tips for parents, not written by SLPs. And actually I had that thought the last time I went. I was looking through the board book section. I'm like, oh, these books are just not, you know, they're just not what we would use, and we'd have to do so much to kind of modify them. And then I actually saw two of Stephanie's Cohen's books on the shelf, so I had to snap a picture, and so I was like, yay! So at least there are two good books up here. So I was very excited to see that.
Holly, you worked with an illustrator. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Yes, I did. So so the book itself, I will just flip. So that the beginning, as you said, has the tips for parents, and then a list of the earliest developing speech sounds on the side. And so the actual printed words in the book begin with those earliest developing speech sounds. So like the beginning, the puppy's waking up, and you have wake up, which starts with that W, the W sound. There's the puppy saying So the actual words in the book, there aren't many of them. It's, you know, it's very simple. So it has the wake up and the eat, and the and woof woof. But then working with the illustrator, I was able to write the notes for the illustrator for what to include in the picture. So that was very exciting to me, because, you know, someone looking at the book, it doesn't look like there was much writing that went into it, but I actually was able to kind of make suggestions as far as, you know, I wanted the actions in the book to be very clear. That was important to me, so that, you know, the puppy is stretching, so that when you're reading it with the little one, that could be the gesture that you do. You know, you can pretend to stretch as you're waking up, or then eating, you know, you could pretend that you're eating the food. So I really wanted the actions to be clearly depicted in order to work on the verbs, even though the verbs aren't always, you know, the word on the page. More is not, you know, it's not a verb, but I wanted that opportunity of, you know, having walking or driving, or and all of those opportunities for gesture imitation. So that was really important for me. And then the other thing I really wanted to include besides the actions, we're just having some extra basic nouns. So like having the sun at the beginning and the moon at the end. And I did that specifically for the pointing, so that when you're looking at the book, I mean, obviously you want it to be simplistic and to have puppy as the main focus, but I also wanted there to be something where you can say, where's the sun, or find the sun, or show me the sun, and work on that pointing skill. So there are some extra basic nouns like a car, and then I have like there's a tree with apples and a bird, and some of those also have additional opportunities for early words. So the bird, you can do tweet, tweet, or you can do up. And so what I'm hoping to do, because that, you know, I couldn't all of it in the book, unfortunately, I had to trim it down a lot. But I would like to put out some kind of companion activity that lists, you know, some of the other early words that I had purposely put in just in the pictures that SLPs would definitely know, you know, to work on apple, or tweet, tweet, or up, or mud. But those more of those words that start with the earliest developing sounds have been included in the book.
Shout out to Emily Rutherford for doing
she was amazing.
Job.
Yeah,
they're so beautiful.
So cute.
Yeah,
so
she did a great job.
Stephanie Anderson, tell us about like putting visuals with your concept.
Yes. So you guys, truth be told, when I was in early intervention, I had this book, the imitation book, on a Google Drive, and it was just pictures from the internet, and I would print it, I would laminate it, I would kind of makeshift it together, and I would bring it into my homes and work with my families, because I needed a book. I needed something that had this very simple, what I was looking for, and I couldn't find it. So now I can find, I have, you know, 2 other very great examples of books I could now buy, but at the time I couldn't find anything. So mine, again, is very, very simple. So oftentimes you'll see just one object on the page, or a person kind of, they are cartoon images, but demonstrating. So this one says, open your mouth. Ah. And so this little boy opening his mouth. Very, very simple. I think all of us keep using that word simple. I wanted it to be very, very clear to parents that this is what we're doing. You know, there's an action, there's a play sound. There's an action, there's a play sound. That's what we're doing. So just very simple images, colorful, drawing your eye.
But
keeping.
again, you've got them against a white backdrop. Like it's
Mhm.
the contrast is
Yeah.
really clear. And for some of our
Mhm.
kiddos, we know who have sensory involvement, visual processing issues, like there's any number of things that go along with speech and language
Mhm.
and developmental issues that are coming into play. And so the minute we can sort of strip away the extra, which is, you know, again, for many kids, the extra is okay. They can focus, they can find the important stuff.
Mhm.
And
And even more for the parents too. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't want the parents to have any, like, I don't want a lot of words on the page. I don't want them to even be tempted to read anything. I want it to just be, you know, very simple. And I think Holly was saying too, it's like sometimes we as speech therapists know these things, we're trained to do these things, and we maybe make some assumptions that it comes as naturally to parents, and it doesn't. And so really laying it out and having it be clear with kind of what the goal is in mind is, I think, really important, and something that just your regular book for a child would be missing, is kind of the how the book is intended to be. I'm not even going to say read. I think just how to interact and engage with your child while looking at a book.
oh, I love that. I love that so much. Okay. So we're going to wrap in a second. I'm going to give all of you the opportunity to tell people where to find you and your book. So just be warned. So, but besides purchasing these books, which are everybody should have them on their shelves. And if you know somebody who's going to have a baby or who has a little one, you should absolutely buy this for them as a gift. And if you are a parent of a little, don't feel like you have to read every page in the book. I think that's like, if we want to wrap it up for one nugget, what other nuggets do you have if you have one? And tell us where to find you. And we're just going to go around on my screen. So Stephanie Anderson, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, that's a tricky. I have like a million that just popped in. If I had to pick one nugget, I would say engagement. Making the book interactive, engaging with your child would be my number one goal. Engagement.
Love it. And if people want to find you and your work, where should they do that?
Sure. So I have a website. It's twincitiesspeechtherapy.com. You can also purchase the imitation book through my website. And then also you can find the imitation book on Amazon as well. And then I am on Facebook and Instagram at Twin Cities Speech Therapy.
Awesome. Holly.
Yes.
How about you?
So for my, I guess, nugget, I would have said the same, you know, making it interactive and making sure that you're, you know, making it playful as you're reading these books, and that can really help to hold attention. I would also say starting out simple with any book, and not necessarily, you know, as you were saying, reading all of the text, but even just picking out one word or one action that's happening and using that word repeatedly, not just in the book, but then repeating that throughout your day-to-day. So if the word in the book, if someone's eating and, you know, you have a really little one who's maybe not talking yet, or not talking much, really just working on, you know, that word eating, and then at meal times or, you know, throughout the day, really emphasizing that word, or maybe pairing it with the sign or the gesture, or making it playful, doing the eating, you know, eating action. So I think those would be my biggest takeaways. And then where to find my book. Right now it's just available for pre-order, but it will be officially available for purchase on June 27th. It will be on Amazon, and it will be on the publisher's website, which is 9wise.com. It's 9wise Publishing. And then I have Instagram, Storybook Connection, and website, storybookconnection.com.
And Stephanie Cohen, what about you?
Yeah, so I'll go younger, since Stephanie and Holly covered kind of that early sort of connection piece and the carryover piece, because we're all about carryover with the little, I love, Stephanie, what you call them, play words or play sounds. We're all about carryover, but when we are first starting with books, one of the things that I like to tell parents is use the book, let your child use the book like an object, like a toy, just to explore it, because parents, again, are concerned that the book is upside down. They're concerned that their child just wants to slam it closed when they open it. And so the tip that I give parents as they're helping kids learn about books as objects and things that they can have fun with is just to let them engage in that sensory motor play, and then to pick the starting point based on what your child is interested in. If your child is staring at the baby crying, then that's what you're going to talk about today, or that's what you're going to model today, you know, that gesture or that sound. So really follow your child's lead, and, you know, don't worry about it having to look or feel a certain way as you're reading. And you can do that with all of our books. I think they're all just like, they're so fun for that purpose. And then you can find my First Learn to Talk book and my First Learn to Talk book, Things That Go, on Amazon. It's in a lot of places. It's Amazon, Barnes and Noble, in the stores too. And then today we're recording this on June 19th. It landed in Walmart across the country. So I'm like so beyond excited about that, just because so many parents will have access to it. And then it's in a bunch of independent bookstores. So, and then I just will say that the I Can Say Mama book and the I Can Say Dada book will be hopefully in all those places in March. So you can find me on Instagram at Learn to Talk with Me, and TikTok, Learn to Talk with Me. And that's really where I spend most of my time.
And you have a lot of great tips, I will say. You know, your reels and tips that you have on there are really great.
Thank you.
So.
Thanks. I try.
What a delight to be with all of you. We could easily spend all day, and we're going to leave it here. We will link to everything in the show notes so that people can find you. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. This was so much fun.
Yeah.